The morning air on Kepler 442b tasted like metal and death. Lieutenant Commander Jiho crouched behind a twisted tree made of living crystal, watching the enemy camp through his scope. His heart beat steady and calm. After 3 years of war against the Valthani Empire, he had learned to control his fear. "Sir, I count 12 hostiles," whispered Corporal Minho beside him. The young soldier's hands shook slightly as he held his rifle. This was his first deep reconnaissance mission. Jiho nodded without taking his eyes off the camp. The Valthani were tall, pale beings with silver skin that seemed to glow in the planet's dual sunlight. They moved with deadly grace around their equipment. But something was wrong. The camp was too big for a normal patrol. Too much heavy machinery. "What are they building?" asked Private Hyen, the team's demolitions expert. Through his scope, Jiho saw the answer. A massive orbital targeting array stretched across the clearing. The device hummed with purple energy that made his teeth ache even from this distance. He had seen pictures of these weapons in intelligence reports. They could call down death from space with perfect accuracy. "That's an orbital strike beacon," Jiho said quietly. His stomach dropped as he understood what this meant. "They're targeting Firebase Dan." Firebase Dan was the last human stronghold on this planet. 15,000 soldiers, medics, and civilians lived there. If the Valthani destroyed it, humanity would lose its foothold in this star system forever. "We have to stop them," Minho said. Jiho studied the camp again. 12 Valthani soldiers guarded the beacon. His team had only 4 people. The odds were terrible, but they had no choice. In 6 hours, when the planet's moons aligned, that beacon would have a clear shot at the human base. "Listen carefully," Jiho told his team. "We go in fast and hard. Hyen, you plant charges on the beacon. Minho and Kangho, you take the left flank. I'll go right. Our job is to buy Hyen time to destroy that thing." The men nodded. They were scared, but they trusted him. Jiho had led them through 12 missions without losing a single soldier. Today might break that record. They moved down the slope like ghosts. The crystal forest provided good cover, but it also made noise when they brushed against the sharp edges. Jiho's armor was scratched and dented from months of fighting. It still worked, but barely. 50 meters from the camp, everything went wrong. Valthani sentry turned at exactly the wrong moment. Her large black eyes locked onto Minho's position. She opened her mouth to shout a warning, but Jiho's rifle spoke first. The plasma bolt took her in the chest, and she fell silently, but the damage was done. The other Valthani had heard the weapon's distinctive whine. They moved with inhuman speed, taking cover and returning fire. Purple energy beams cut through the air where Jiho's head had been a second before. "Move, move, move!" Jiho shouted. The battle was chaos. Plasma fire turned crystal trees into glass dust. Kangho screamed as a beam caught his shoulder, spinning him around. Minho tried to help his wounded friend and took a shot to the leg. Jiho ran toward the beacon, firing as he moved. A Valthani warrior stepped into his path, raising a curved blade that glowed with energy. Jiho rolled under the swing and put 3 shots into the alien's torso. The warrior fell backward but kept moving, trying to crawl toward a weapon. These things were hard to kill. Hyen reached the beacon and started placing charges. 30 seconds, sir." A new voice cut through the battle. Noise, it spoke in perfect English with a cold female tone. "Human soldiers, you are surrounded. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." Jiho looked around. More Valthani had appeared from hidden positions. They had walked straight into a trap. The beacon was bait, and they had taken it like hungry fish. But Hyen was still working. 20 seconds. "Keep them busy," Jiho yelled. He emptied his rifle at the nearest group of enemies, then drew his sidearm. Plasma bolts flew past his head like angry hornets. A Valthani officer stepped into view. She was taller than the others, with intricate silver patterns carved into her pale skin. Her armor was black and smooth, clearly expensive. This was someone important. "I am Commander Nara of the Valthani Strategic Division," she said. "You cannot stop what is coming, human." Your base will burn and your species will learn its place in the galaxy. 10 seconds. Jiho aimed his pistol at her head. Maybe, but you won't live to see it. He pulled the trigger just as the world exploded. Hyans. Charges went off like a small sun. The beacon twisted and melted, its purple glow dying into darkness. The shockwave threw everyone to the ground. Jiho's ears rang and he tasted blood. When his vision cleared, he saw bodies everywhere. 3 of his men lay still among the crystal shards. Only Hyen moved, crawling toward him with a hole in his chest. Did we Did we get it, sir? Hyen asked. Yeah, son. We got it. Jiho dragged himself over to his dying soldier. You did good. Hyen smiled and closed his eyes forever. Jiho was alone now. His team was dead, but they had completed the mission. The beacon was destroyed. Firebase Dan was safe. Then he heard. Groaning nearby, Commander Nara lay twisted among the wreckage, her perfect armor cracked and smoking. Purple blood ran from a gash in her forehead. She was trying to reach something in her belt, but her arm wouldn't work properly. Jiho stood slowly and walked over to her. He could end this now, put a bullet in her head and walk away. She was his enemy. She had killed his friends, but as he aimed his weapon, she spoke. You have won? She coughed, and more purple blood stained her lips. The beacon was just one part of the plan. The real strike comes from orbit in 48 hours. Nothing can stop it now. What are you talking about? She laughed bitterly. The strike needs 2 authorization codes. The beacon provided one automatically, the other... She tapped a device on her chest. The other is locked to my biometric signature. Heart rate, brain patterns, genetic markers. If I die, the system assumes I was captured. It will default to maximum destruction. Jiho felt cold despite the warm air. What does that mean? It means your precious base will not just be destroyed. The entire northern continent will be turned to glass. Every human, every building, every trace of your species on this world will disappear. You're lying, am I? She tried to sit up, but failed. Look at me, human. I am dying. This planet's atmosphere is poison to my people. I have perhaps 6 hours before my organs fail completely. When I die, 40,000 of your kind die with me. Jiho stared at her. The nearest human base with medical facilities was Firebase Dan itself, 30 miles through enemy territory. No vehicle could make that journey without being detected and destroyed. It would have to be done on foot. There has to be another way, he said. There is no other way. In 6 hours I will be dead. In 48 hours your people will follow. She closed her eyes. This is how wars end, human. Not with glory, but with mathematics. Jiho looked at his dead friends, then at his dying enemy. He thought about the 15,000 people at Firebase Dan, soldiers like him. Medics who saved lives. Civilians who just wanted to go home. He made a decision that would change everything. Jiho holstered his weapon and knelt beside Commander Nara. Can you walk? She opened her eyes in surprise. What? I asked if you can walk. Because if you want to live long enough to stop that strike, we need to move, now. For the first time since he had known about the Valthani, Jiho saw one look truly confused. You would save me, your enemy? I'm not saving you, Jiho said as he began fashioning a stretcher from broken equipment. I'm saving them. He pointed north, toward Firebase Dan and 40,000 human lives hanging in the balance. The real journey was about to begin. Jiho pulled the makeshift stretcher across the rough ground, feeling every rock and root through his worn boots. Commander Nara lay still on the metal frame he had built from pieces of the destroyed beacon. Her breathing was shallow and quick. Like a wounded animal, the dual suns of Kepler 442 be burned hot overhead. Sweat ran down Jiho's face inside his damaged helmet. His power armor had taken too much damage in the fight. The cooling system was broken and the servo motors that should help him carry heavy loads sparked and died one by one. He was carrying his enemy through hell on pure human strength. Why are you doing this? Nara asked suddenly. Her voice was weak but still sharp with suspicion. Joe didn't stop walking. I told you to save my people. No, I mean, why not just cut off my hand, take my biometric data that way? Surely your human technology could fake the readings. Jiho had thought about that. It would be easier to carry a hand than a whole person. But he couldn't bring himself to do it, even to an enemy. Because you're not dead yet. That makes no sense. I'm your enemy. I have killed hundreds of your soldiers. Maybe, but right now, you're just someone who needs help. Nara was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was different, confused instead of angry. In my culture, enemies are left to die. It is a matter of honor. The weak deserve death. The strong deserve victory. This is the natural order. Well, this isn't your culture. The first mile was the hardest. Jiho's legs burned as he pulled the stretcher up a steep hill covered in sharp crystal formations. Each step sent shooting pains through his back. His rifle banged against his hip with every movement, reminding him that they were walking through a war zone. At the top of the hill, he stopped to rest. The view showed him what lay ahead. 30 miles of broken landscape stretched toward the northern horizon. Crystal forests gave way to rocky badlands, then to the acid swamps that surrounded. Fire-based Dayan. It would take them through 3 different climate zones, each more dangerous than the last. You will never make it, Nara said. She had been watching his face. Humans are weak. Your bodies break easily. You will collapse before we reach the halfway point. Maybe. Jiho checked his water supply. 3 bottles left. Not enough for 30 miles, especially in this heat. But I'll keep going until I can't. Why? Because that's what humans do. He started walking again. The second mile was easier because the ground was flatter, but the heat got worse. The dual suns reflected off every crystal surface, turning the forest into a furnace. Jiho's armor trapped the heat like an oven. He wanted to take it off, but the protection was worth more than the comfort. Nara drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes she mumbled words in her own language. Other times she spoke in English, asking questions. That made no sense. The poison in the air was affecting her brain. Tell me about your base, she said during one clear moment. Why? Because I am dying and I am curious. You are walking 30 miles to save people I was ordered to kill. What makes them worth this? Sacrifice? Jiho thought about fire-based Dayan. He had been stationed there for 8 months. It's not much to look at. Concrete walls, metal buildings, too many people in too small a space. But it's home. Home to killers and invaders. Home to doctors and engineers and cooks and mechanics. People who fix things instead of breaking them. People who grow food and teach children and write letters to families they might never see again. Soldiers. Yeah, soldiers too. But soldiers who fight because they have something to protect, not because they want to conquer. Nara was quiet. Again, Jiho used the silence to focus on his breathing and his footsteps. Left foot, right foot, pull the stretcher. Ignore the pain. Ignore the heat. Ignore the voice in his head that said this was impossible. By the 3rd mile, his water was half gone. By the 4th mile, he was rationing it carefully. By the 5th mile, he was sharing it with Nara. You are giving me your water, she observed. You need it more than I do? Your body isn't used to this atmosphere. I'm your enemy. You're my patient now. The words surprised him as much as they surprised her. But they felt true. Somewhere during these miles of walking, she had stopped being Commander Nara of the Valthani Strategic Division and had become just someone who needed his help. As the suns began to set, the temperature dropped fast. Jiho had expected this, but it was still shocking. Within minutes, his breath turned to fog. Ice crystals formed on the metal stretcher. We need shelter, Nara said through chattering teeth. Her silver skin had turned almost white with cold. Jiho looked around. They were in the middle of the crystal forest with no caves or buildings in sight. But he remembered his survival training. He found a cluster of fallen crystal trees and used his rifle's energy pack to melt them into a rough shelter. The process drained his weapon's battery, but it gave them a windbreak. Jiho pulled Nara's stretcher inside the small space and activated his armor's emergency heater. It would only run for a few hours, but it would keep them alive through the night. You are using your equipment to save me, Nara said. Your weapon is now useless. Your armor will run out of power. You are making yourself weaker to make me stronger. That's right. This is not logical behavior. Logic isn't everything. Nara studied his face in the dim light from his armors. Display. What is more important than logic? Doing what's right, even when it hurts you? Especially when it hurts. As the night grew colder, Jiho gave Nara his emergency blanket. She protested, but he insisted. His human body could handle the cold better than her alien physiology. He spent the night awake, watching for dangers and feeding small pieces of crystal into the heater to keep it running. I do not understand you, Nara said in the darkness. What don't you understand? In my dreams I remember something. From before the war, a human medic treated wounded Valthani prisoners. She could have let us die, but she didn't. I thought, it was weakness then. Now I wonder if it was something else. What do you think it was? I do not know the word in your language. Try. She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was very soft. Mercy? Yeah, mercy. Is that why you carry me? Mercy? Jiho thought about his dead friends. About the 40,000 people at Firebase Dayan. About the choice he had made to save someone who had tried to kill them all. No, he said finally. I carry you because it's the only way to save everyone, but the way I carry you, that's mercy. When morning came, Nara was stronger. The nights. Rest and Jiho's care had helped her body fight the atmospheric poisoning. She could sit up on the stretcher and even walk a few steps with help. 25 miles to go, Jiho said as he packed their few supplies. You cannot make it. You are already exhausted and we have not even reached the difficult terrain yet. Jiho strapped on his pack and grabbed the stretcher handles. His body ached in places he didn't know existed, but his mind was clear. He had made a promise to himself and to the people counting on him. Watch me. He started walking north, toward Firebase Dayan and the race against time that would determine the fate of two species. Behind him, Nara watched with growing amazement. As the human did something her people believed was impossible, he chose compassion over survival, and somehow made both stronger because of it. The morning of the second day brought new dangers. Jiho pulled the stretcher through the last of the crystal forest, and the landscape ahead made his heart sink. Rocky badlands stretched for miles, broken by deep canyons and sharp ridges. Worse. He could see movement in the distance, Valthani patrols. We are entering my people's territory now, Nara said. She was more alert today, though still too weak to walk far. They will be looking for survivors from yesterday's battle. Jiho studied the terrain through his damaged scope. 3 separate patrol groups moved across the Badlands in search patterns. Each group had at least 6 soldiers and a hover vehicle. Fighting them was impossible. He would have to be smarter. Can you contact them? He asked. Tell them to let. Yusuf's path? Nara shook her head. My communication device was destroyed, and even if it worked, they would not believe me. A Valthani commander being carried by a human soldier? They would assume you had taken me prisoner. What would they do then? Kill you immediately? Take me for interrogation? That would end everything. Without Nara alive and willing to cooperate, the orbital strike would proceed. 40,000. People would die. Jiho found a narrow canyon that led roughly north. It would hide them from the patrols, but it would also slow them down. Time was running out. They had less than 36 hours before the strike. The canyon walls rose high on both sides, cutting out most of the sunlight. The air was cooler here, which helped, but the ground was rough and rocky. Every step sent jolts of pain through. Jiho's legs, his power armor, was almost completely dead now. Only the basic life support system still worked. You should leave me here, Nara said after they had traveled 2 difficult miles through the canyon. Find another way to stop the strike. There is no other way, we both know that. Then you should accept that your people are going to die. Running yourself to death will not change that. Jiho stopped walking and turned to look at her. Is that what you would do? Give up? I would be practical. I would not waste energy on impossible tasks. Maybe that's the difference between us. They reached a place where the canyon split into 3 different paths. Jiho studied each option carefully. The left path sloped upward toward high ground but looked exposed to enemy observation. The right path went downward into darkness. The middle path continued straight but seemed to lead to a dead end. Which way? He asked. Nara looked surprised. You are asking me? You know this terrain better than I do. I am your prisoner. Why would you trust my advice? Because keeping you alive is the only way to save my people? If you want to live, you'll help me get us there safely. Nara considered this. It was logical, even by her standards. The middle path, there is an old mining tunnel that connects to the northern canyons. My people use it sometimes, but it should be empty now. Joe chose to trust her. He pulled the stretcher toward the middle path, even though it looked like a trap. But Nara was right. After a few hundred meters, they found the entrance to a tunnel carved into the canyon wall. The tunnel was dark and cool. Jiho used his armor's failing lights to see the way ahead. Ancient mining equipment sat rusted and broken along the walls. This place had been abandoned for years. Who built this? Jiho asked. The original inhabitants of this world. They died out long before either of our species arrived here. What happened to them? War. It always comes down to war. They were halfway through the tunnel when Jiho heard voices ahead. He stopped immediately and turned off his lights. In the darkness, he could see the glow of Valthani energy weapons moving toward them. Patrol, Nara whispered. Jiho single quotes as mind raced. The tunnel was narrow with no side passages. They were trapped between the patrol ahead and the open canyon behind. Fighting was impossible in this confined space, and running would just get them caught in the open. How many? He whispered. Nara listened to the voices. Her people's language sounded like music, but cold music without emotion. 4 soldiers. They are investigating the tunnel entrance. The voices grew louder. Soon they would be close enough to see Jiho's position. He had to make a choice quickly. Stay quiet, he told Nara. Then he did something that shocked both of them. He lay down on the tunnel floor and covered himself in the stretcher with loose rocks and dirt from the mining debris. It was not much of a disguise, but in the darkness it might work. The Valthani patrol was looking for active threats, not piles of old junk. The 4 soldiers passed within meters of their hiding place. Jiho held his breath and felt his heart beating so loud he was sure they would hear it. One soldier stopped and aimed his light directly at their pile of debris. Jiho's hand moved slowly toward his pistol. If they were discovered, he would try to take at least one enemy with him, but the soldier just muttered something in Valthani and moved on. The patrol continued through the tunnel and disappeared toward the southern entrance. Jiho waited 5 long minutes before he dared to move. When he finally stood up, he was shaking from tension and exhaustion. That was clever, Nara said quietly, but also very stupid. If they had found us, we would both be dead. But they didn't find us. This time, what happens when we meet the next patrol? And the one after that? Jiho didn't answer because he didn't have a good answer. They would keep taking risks and hoping for luck. It was not a great plan, but it was the only plan they had. They reached the northern end of the tunnel as the suns began to set. Ahead lay more badlands, but these were different. Jiho could see the dark smudge on the horizon that marked the beginning of the acid swamps. They were making progress, but they were also running out of time and supplies. Jiho's last water bottle was nearly empty. His body was running on pure determination now. Every muscle ached, and his vision was starting to blur from dehydration and exhaustion. We need to find water, he said. There is a supply cache 3 miles north, Nara said. My people established it for long-range patrols. Will it be guarded? Probably. Not. It is automated. They had no choice but to try. Jiho pulled the stretcher across the rocky ground as darkness fell. The temperature dropped quickly, and soon they were both shivering again. The supply cache was exactly where Nara had said it would be. A small metal building sat in a shallow depression, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. But as they approached, Jiho saw lights inside. Someone's here, he whispered. Through the small windows, they could see movement. At least 2 figures inside the building. We need those. Supplies, Nara said. Without water, we will not survive another day. Jiho studied the building. There was only one entrance, and it faced their direction. Whoever was inside would see them coming. But maybe that could work to their advantage. Can you walk? He asked. Little, why? Because I have an idea, a crazy idea. Crazier than carrying your enemy 30 miles through hostile territory? Much crazier. Jiho helped Nara to her feet. She was unsteady, but could move with support. Together they walked toward the supply cache. Jiho kept his weapons holstered and his hands visible. When they were 50 meters away, the door opened. 2 Valthani soldiers stepped out with their weapons raised. Stop, one of them shouted in English. Identify yourselves. Jiho stopped walking but kept supporting Nara. I am Lieutenant Commander Jiho of the Human Colonial Defense Force, he called back. I am escorting Commander Nara to your northern command post. She has been injured and needs medical attention. The soldiers looked confused. This was clearly not a situation they had trained for. Nara played her part perfectly. She spoke rapidly, in her own language, using the tone of command that came naturally to her. Whatever she said, it made the soldiers lower their weapons. What did you tell them? Jiho asked quietly. That I was on a special mission that required human cooperation. That you were under my command and they should assist us? Will they believe it? For now, but when they contact their superiors, how long do we have? Maybe an hour before they realize something is wrong. It would have to be enough. Jiho helped Nara toward the supply cache, walking into the most dangerous gamble of his life. The 2 Valthani soldiers led them into the supply cache without suspicion. Inside, the building was filled with water containers, medical supplies, and ration packs. Jiho wanted to grab everything and run, but he forced himself to move slowly. And naturally, Commander Nara requires immediate hydration therapy, he said to the soldiers, using words he hoped sounded official. One soldier, young with bright silver markings on his armor, nodded eagerly. Of course. Should we contact command? About your mission? No, Nara said quickly. This operation requires communication silence. Any contact could compromise our position. The soldiers accepted this without question. They helped Jiho get fresh water and medical supplies for Nara, but as they worked, Jiho could see doubt growing in their eyes. Something felt wrong to them, even if they couldn't identify what. We should leave, Nara whispered to him. Soon they will start asking better questions. Jiho nodded. He filled his water bottles and stuffed his pack with supplies. Thank you for your assistance, he told the soldiers. We must continue north immediately. But as they turned to leave, the older soldier stepped forward. Wait, I need to see your mission authorization codes. Nara's face went pale. That information is classified above your security level. Then I need to contact my superior for verification. The soldier reached for his communication device. Jiho knew they had seconds before everything collapsed. He made a desperate choice. Actually, Jiho said loudly, there's something you both need to see outside. Evidence of human troop movements in the southern canyons. Both soldiers immediately became alert. Reports of enemy activity were serious business. They followed Jiho. Outside, leaving Nara in the building. As soon as they were clear of the door, Jiho activated the building's emergency lockdown system. Heavy metal shutters slammed down over the windows and doors, trapping the soldiers outside and Nara inside. What? Have you done? The older soldier shouted, raising his weapon. Bought us time, Jiho replied. He was already running toward the building's rear emergency exit. Where Nara would be waiting, the soldiers fired, but Jiho was already around the corner. He found Nara struggling with the emergency controls, her weakened hands unable to work. The mechanism properly, let me, Jiho said. He forced the exit open and helped her outside. Behind them, the soldiers were trying to break into their own building. They had perhaps minutes before the lockdown ended. This way, Nara said, pointing toward a rocky ridge. There is a path that leads to the swamplands. They moved as fast as they could, but Nara was getting weaker again. The stress of the deception had cost her precious energy. Jiho had to support most of her weight as they climbed the ridge, 20 miles down. 10 to go. By the time they reached the ridge top, Jiho was staggering. His human body had been pushed beyond all reasonable limits. His legs shook with every step, and his vision kept blurring. But he could see their destination now, the acid swamps spread across the northern horizon like a green and yellow carpet. Deadly, but also the final barrier before Firebase Dan. The base's communication towers were visible in the far distance, tiny needles against the sky. "We're going to make it," he said. Then he collapsed. Jiho's legs simply stopped working. He fell forward onto the rocky ground, his pack spilling supplies everywhere. His body had finally reached the point where determination wasn't enough. "Jiho!" Nara called out. She tried to reach him but could barely move herself for several minutes. They both lay on the cold rocks, exhausted and helpless. The wind carried the smell of acid and decay from the swamps below. In the distance, they could hear Valthani search vehicles beginning their hunt. "I can't," Jiho whispered. "I can't go any further." "Yes, you can," Nara said firmly. "You are human. You do impossible things. I'm not superhuman. I'm just a soldier who's made too many mistakes." Nara dragged herself closer to him. Moving those few meters took all her remaining strength. "Do you want to know what I remember now?" "From before the war," Jiho looked at her through his exhaustion. "I was a young officer on a diplomatic mission," she continued. "There was an accident. Our ship crashed on a human colony world. I was badly injured, trapped in the wreckage. A human medic found me." She paused, breathing heavily. "Her name was Dr. Kim. She worked for 6 hours to free me from the twisted metal. She could have saved 2 human patients in that time, but she chose to save one enemy instead." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because when I asked her why, she said the same thing you said. Because it was right. Because mercy makes us stronger, not weaker." Nara's voice grew stronger. "That woman carried me to safety when she could have left me to die. Just like you are carrying me now. I can't carry you anymore." "Then I will carry you." Before Jiho could protest, Nara began pulling supplies from his pack. She found a small metal container and struggled to open it. Inside were dried plants. "From the swamplands below, swamp moss," she explained. "My people use it for emergency medicine. It will give you energy, but it is dangerous for humans. Too much will stop your heart." "How much is too much?" "I do not know, but without it we both die here." Jiho looked at the moss, then at the distant communication towers of Firebase Dan. 10 miles. He had walked 20 miles on human strength. Alone, but the last 10 might as well be 1,000. He ate the moss. The effect was immediate and terrifying. Energy flooded through his body like electricity. His heart began beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. His hands shook and colors became too bright, but he could stand again. "How long will this last?" he asked. "Maybe 2 hours?" "Maybe. Less, that has to be enough." Jiho picked up Nara and began walking toward the swamps. His body felt like it was burning from the inside, but his legs moved with mechanical precision. The alien stimulant was pushing his human physiology far beyond safe limits. "You are going to die," Nara said as he carried her down the slope. "Maybe, but not before I get you to that base." "Why does this matter so much to you?" Jiho thought about Dr. Kim, the human medic who had saved Nara years ago. About his dead friends who had given their lives to destroy the beacon. About 40,000 people who had no idea their lives hung in the balance. "Because this is what we do," he said. "We save people. Even when it's impossible. Even when it hurts, even when it kills us." The edge of the acid swamps rose up ahead of them, green and deadly and beautiful. Steam rose from pools of chemicals that could dissolve metal. Strange creatures moved in the toxic water, adapted to an environment that would kill most life forms instantly. 10 miles of that lay between them. And salvation. Jiho adjusted his grip on Nara and stepped into the swamp. His boots began to smoke immediately as the acid ate at the protective coating. 8 hours until the orbital strike. Nara said quietly. Then we better hurry. Behind them, the searchlights of Valthani vehicles swept across the ridge they had just left. Ahead lay the most dangerous part of their journey, and Jiho was running on borrowed time with a heart that might explode at any moment, but he kept walking north, carrying his enemy toward a future where enemies might become something else entirely. The acid swamps were worse than anything Jiho had imagined. Green mist rose from pools of chemicals that glowed with their own sickly light. The air burned his lungs with every breath, and the ground beneath his feet was soft and treacherous. One wrong step could send them both into a pool of acid that would dissolve them in seconds. Nara guided him through the safest paths, her knowledge of the swamplands keeping them alive. Left here, avoid the yellow pools. Step only on the dark patches. The alien stimulant was wearing off faster than expected. Jiho's superhuman energy was fading, replaced by exhaustion that felt like death. His heart still beat too fast, making him dizzy and sick. "How much further?" he asked. 5 miles, maybe 6. It might as well have been 100. Jiho's legs were starting to give out again, and this time there was no more swamp moss to save him. He had used his body's last reserves. They were halfway through the swamps when they met the patrol. 6 figures emerged from the mist ahead of them. But these weren't Valthani soldiers. They wore human armor, but something was wrong with their movements. Too smooth. Too precise. Like machines pretending to be people. "Lieutenant Commander Jiho," the lead figure called out. "You will stop and surrender the prisoner." Jiho recognized the voice and his heart broke. "Commander Hyuk?" His old mentor stepped into clear view. Commander Hyuk had been Jiho's training officer, the man who had taught him everything about being a soldier. He had been captured 6 months ago and presumed dead, but this wasn't the same man. Hyuk's eyes were cold and empty. Silver wires ran from implants in his skull down to his spine. The Valthani had turned him into something between human and machine. "You have been misled," Hyuk said in a voice that sounded almost normal. "The Valthani offer peace through unity. Resistance only brings suffering." "They brainwashed you," Jiho said. "They enlightened me. I see clearly now. Humanity cannot win this war. Our only choice is to serve our new masters and hope for mercy." The other 5 soldiers with Hyuk were the same, captured humans turned into willing slaves through Valthani technology. They moved to surround Jiho and Nara, cutting off all escape routes. "Give us the commander," Hyuk said. "She will be returned to her people. You will be taken for processing. It is painless. Processing, neural conditioning. You will become like us, happy to serve, free from the burden of useless hope." Jiho looked at his old friend and felt sick. This was worse than death. They had taken everything that made Hyuk human and replaced it with artificial loyalty. "I won't let them do that to you," Nara whispered. "What?" She was reaching for something on her belt. A small device that glowed with Valthani energy. "Neural disruptor. It will break their conditioning, but only for a few minutes." "Do it." Nara activated the device. A pulse of energy spread outward, invisible but powerful. All 6 conditioned soldiers stumbled and grabbed their heads in pain. For a moment, the real Commander Hyuk looked out through his eyes. "Jiho, what have they done to me?" "I can feel them in my head, making me think things that aren't true." "Fight." Jiho said. "You're stronger than their machines." "I can't. It's too strong." "But I can help you escape. There's a path through the green pools. Dangerous, but it leads directly to your base." Hyuk pointed toward a section of swamp that looked even more deadly than the rest. "Go now, before the conditioning takes hold again." Already the empty look was returning to his eyes. The other soldiers were recovering too, their artificial loyalty reasserting itself. "Thank you," Jiho said to his friend. "Kill me," Hyuk whispered. "Please. Don't let me live as their slave." But Jiho couldn't do it. Even now, even like this, he couldn't kill someone who had once saved his life a dozen times. "I'm sorry." He picked up Nara and ran toward the green pools, leaving his conditioned friend behind. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. The path Hyuk had shown them was a nightmare. They had to leap from one small island to another across pools of acid that bubbled and steamed. One slip would kill them both instantly. Jiho's body was failing completely now. The stimulant had burned through his last reserves of strength. His hands shook so badly he could barely hold on to Nora. His vision came and went in waves of darkness. "I can't make the next jump," he said, looking across a particularly wide pool of acid. Double quotes. "Yes, you can. Look at me, I'm dying." Nara studied his face. His skin was gray, and sweat poured down his forehead despite the cool air. The alien stimulant was killing him slowly, but he was right. He couldn't make that jump. "Put me down," she said. "What?" "I can walk now. The rest in the supply cache helped me recover some strength. We go together, or we don't go at all." Jiho set her down carefully. She was still weak, but she could stand. And move slowly. Together they approached the wide pool. "On three," Jiho said. 1, 2, 3. They jumped together. For a moment they flew through the air over the deadly green acid. Then they hit the far shore and rolled to safety, but the effort had cost Jiho everything. He lay on the rocky ground, unable to move. His heart was beating so fast it felt like it might explode. "How far?" he gasped. Nara looked toward the north. Through the mist she could see the walls of Firebase Dayan. So close they could almost touch them. 1 mile? 1 mile might as well be 100. Jiho tried to stand and fell immediately. His legs wouldn't support him anymore. "Leave me," he said. "Take the disruptor device. Maybe you can convince the guards to let you in." "No, you have to. Without your biometric signature, everyone dies." I said no. Nara knelt beside him and put his arm around her shoulders. "You carried me 29 miles. I will carry you the last one." Together, supporting each other, they began the final approach to Firebase Dayan. Jiho provided the strength and Nara provided the will. Step by agonizing step, they moved toward salvation. In the distance, alarms began to sound. The base's sensors had detected them. Soon, human soldiers would come to investigate. The question was whether Jiho would live long enough to explain who they were and why they had come. "Almost there," Nara said. Joe's heart gave one massive, painful beat and then began to slow down. The stimulant was wearing off and his body was shutting down. But ahead of them, he could see the gates of Firebase Dayan opening. Soldiers in human armor ran toward them across the swampland. Real soldiers, not conditioned slaves, free people coming to help. "We made it," Jiho whispered. Then everything went black. Jiho woke up in the medical bay of Firebase Dayan 3 hours later. His body felt like it had been hit by a transport ship, but he was alive. Machines beeped around his bed, monitoring his vital signs and slowly repairing the damage the alien stimulant had done to his heart. "You're awake," said Dr. Lee, the base's chief medical officer. "I wasn't sure you would survive. That plant extract nearly killed you." "Nara," Jiho said immediately. "The Valthani commander. Is she alive?" "Barely. She's in the next room. Her biometric readings are stable enough for now." "The orbital strike?" "Cancelled. Her authorization codes worked." 40,000 people owe their lives to you, Lieutenant Commander." Jiho tried to sit up, but his body refused to cooperate. "I need to see her. In a few hours. Right now, you both need rest." But Jiho couldn't rest. Not yet. Too much had happened, and too much was still unresolved. "Doctor, I need you to arrange something. A communication link to Valthani Command. Nara has information they need to hear." Dr. Lee looked skeptical. "Information from a prisoner? The brass won't like that." "She's not a prisoner anymore. She's something else." 2 hours later, Jiho sat in a wheelchair next to Nara's medical bed. She was conscious but weak, her silver skin pale from the atmospheric poisoning and exhaustion. Around them, the base's senior officers gathered for the most unusual briefing in military history. Colonel Park, the base commander, activated the communication array. "This is Firebase Dayan requesting immediate contact with Valthani Strategic Command." The response came quickly. A holographic image appeared showing a tall Valthani general with elaborate silver markings covering his face. "I am General Vorthak." You will explain why you contact us with one of our officers. General, Nara said weakly, I am Commander. Nara, I have critical intelligence about the orbital strike authorization. Commander Nara was reported dead yesterday. Who are you really? I am alive because this human saved me. She gestured toward Jiho. But that is not important now. What is important is that the strike you ordered was not what you believed. General Vorthek's expression became dangerous. Explain. The orbital bombardment system was programmed to destroy not just the human base but this entire continent, including the civilian colony ships hidden in the northern oceans. Impossible. The strike was precisely targeted. Check the secondary authorization codes. Check the payload specifications. You will find that someone modified the mission parameters. There was a long pause as the general consulted with officers outside the hologram's range. When he returned, his face was filled with cold anger. The strike would have killed 200,000 of our own people. Who authorized these modifications? General Keffer and his faction. They believe our species should be purified of those who show weakness toward humans. They consider the civilian colonists to be contaminated by proximity to human ideals. This revelation sent shockwaves through both the human and Valthani commands. A faction within the Valthani military was willing to commit genocide against their own people to maintain ideological purity. Where is your evidence for this accusation? General Vorthek demanded. Nara provided access codes and file locations that proved her claims. As the evidence mounted, it became clear that she was telling the truth. A conspiracy within the Valthani Empire had been exposed by the most unlikely source imaginable. This changes everything, Colonel Park said quietly. Yes, General Vorthak. Agreed. Commander Nara, your actions have prevented a catastrophe for both our peoples. You will be remembered with honor. I did not do this alone, Nara said. She looked at Jiho with something that might have been respect. This human carried me 30 miles through hostile territory to save not just his people, but mine as well. He showed me that mercy is not weakness. Mercy, the general repeated the word like he was testing its meaning. An interesting concept. Over the following weeks, the situation developed rapidly. General Kethfer's conspiracy was exposed and defeated in a brief but violent civil war within the Valthani Empire. Those who survived were exiled to distant worlds. Nara chose to remain at Firebase Dayan as a liaison officer, working to build understanding between the two species. Her presence helped negotiate the first ceasefire in 3 years of brutal war. Jiho recovered slowly from his ordeal. The damage to his heart would never fully heal, but he was alive and able to continue serving. He was promoted to general and given command of the first joint human-Valthani peacekeeping force. Do you ever regret it? Nara asked him one evening as they stood on the base's observation deck, watching the sunset over the acid swamps. Regret what? Saving me. Carrying your enemy when you could have let me die. Jiho thought about his friends who had died in the original battle. About Commander Hyuk, still lost somewhere in the conditioning that had stolen his mind. About all the pain and loss that war had brought to both their peoples. No, he said finally, I don't regret it. Why not? Because it proved something important. It proved that we don't have to be enemies forever. 6 months later, the first joint colony was established on a neutral world. Humans and Valthani worked together to build something new, something that neither species could have created alone. The colony's central monument was a simple stone marker with 2 names carved into it. Lieutenant Commander Jiho and Commander Nara. Below their names was a single sentence in both languages. They chose mercy over victory and found both. General Jiho often visited the monument during his inspection tours. People would ask him about that day in the swamps, about the choice he had made to save his enemy. His answer was always the same. I didn't save her because she was worth saving. I saved her because saving people is what makes us human. Even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when everyone tells you it's impossible. But what if she had been lying? They would ask, what if there had been no orbital strike? What if you had carried her 30 miles for nothing? Jiho would smile and point to the thriving colony around them. where human children played with young Valthani in parks designed by both species working together. Then I would have carried her 30 miles to prove that enemies can become friends. And that, he would say, would have been worth it too. The war between humans and the Valthani Empire officially ended 2 years later. The peace treaty was signed in a ceremony attended by representatives from dozens of worlds. But those who knew the real story understood that peace had actually begun much earlier, in the moment when one human soldier chose to carry his enemy to safety. It began with a single choice to show mercy when mercy seemed impossible. It began with 30 miles of walking through hell, one step at a time, refusing to give up on the possibility that tomorrow could be better than today. It began with the simple, radical idea that everyone deserves a chance to be saved, even your enemies, especially your enemies.